Hi there, my name is Jay with ServerMatter, and I want to talk to you a little bit about a case where you don't have your login information to your router. But before we go into this video any further, let's talk about possibilities of retrieving your username and password. If in fact the manufacturer username and password has been changed, then resetting is probably going to be the only option here. But let's say nobody's ever changed the username and password. You got it out of the box, you set it up, and it was never done. Even though it's supposed to be done, it was never done. It's possible, by knowing the manufacturer and the model number of your router, we can find the default username and password for that device, because all devices have one. For instance, we've got a Netgear wireless router right here, and this is one example. There's a zillion different shapes and sizes of a router, but on the bottom of all of them, you'll see some tags like this, and it's going to have the manufacturer's name and as importantly, the model number. Now, it's even possible in a very rare instance that the administration password will be there, but typically it's just going to be a wireless password or something like that. But with the model number, we can then research that particular device, and we might find the username is admin and the password is some common thing that they provided. And this happens often enough. Another possibility is if it is your internet service provider that has provided the router that you're using, then they would be able to provide you the username and password for that device. A lot of businesses, they don't have their own router. They've just got the one Comcast or Cox or Spectrum or whoever the internet service provider was has installed for them. They'll be able to provide you with the login information for that device, and you can get it to us. If neither of those is the case, keep watching. Your network router is the most critical piece of infrastructure for the typical business, as it passes out all the IP addresses. If there are any ports that need to be opened for specific devices, it would control it. In the majority of businesses, it's all fairly automated, and it's not that big of a deal if you have to reset a router. But there are cases, in many cases, where very specific settings have been set in that router that make parts of your infrastructure work. For instance, we've had time clocks that required static IPs, and they have to be predictable known IPs set in the router. We have printers sometimes that have a static IP so that everybody in the building or floor or whatever can get to that printer. It has to have a known predictable IP address. And the use case goes on and on from there as far as devices that might have a static IP assigned to them. A lot of the times it's nothing out of the ordinary, including for voice over internet phones, need to be reset. The problem is, without a login, without being able to see that, we would have no idea. And there's no way to fix this other than resetting your router back to factory. Because one thing's for sure, in order to access your server from the outside world, we're going to have to edit your router configurations or have your technician do it and open certain ports to the IP address that is the server. Now, we should consider worst case scenario. If you have a static IP and there are some very specific settings that your router needs to be configured with in order for you to even get an internet connection, then the prudent thing to do is to have us or have your technician call your internet service provider and ask them whether or not you have a static IP, and if so, what's the specific configurations that need to be set in your router so that when it comes back online, if you don't have internet, it can be programmed on the spot. The process of digging that out of your internet service provider can vary depending on how good their support is. If you know you don't have a static IP and you're not paying extra for a static IP, then that's probably not necessary. And so we'll reset it to the factory, and you'll basically see what's working, and if everything's working, great. If some devices are not working, we'll have to research those individual devices and find out what has to be configured in the router in order for them to work as planned. That's the reality of it. So I hope you save your router credentials, but if you don't, we'll be able to work through the process. But there can be some labor. There will be some labor attached to that, and it could be a very small amount of labor, or it could be a lot of labor, depending on how far down the rabbit hole we or your technician has to go. Thanks for watching.